What's up, YouTube? Today I just want to make a video about which one of these cameras I believe you should actually get. The Red Komodo or the Pyxis by Blackmagic. With that being said, I've been able to use both of these cameras for some time and I wanted to go ahead and do a semi-deep dive, but really kind of just let people know who are on the verge, the people who are really, confused about what camera to get. Especially since Red recently dropped the price of the Red Komodo to $3,000. Now, before I get into it, I do personally feel like this is a temporary price drop. And the reason I say that is because this price drop is only related to the OG Komodo and not the Komodo X. I do feel like this price drop won't last long, mainly because it's only for the OG Komodo and not the Komodo X. So this is probably just going to last while supplies last. With that being said, one of the first differences on both of these cameras is obviously going to be the size. The Komodo is a much smaller camera. Now keep in mind, my Komodo has a cage on it, but overall the Komodo is a true box shaped camera. Like literally it's a box. Just to look at a size reference, this is the Pyxis. Now keep in mind, this Pyxis does have a camera cage, but the Pyxis is just a longer camera in general. So if you just look at them kind of like the way I have now, it's bigger in every regards. So from a size perspective, the Pyxis is definitely a bigger camera. So definitely if you're somebody that legit wants a smaller camera, Komodo is probably going to be the wave. Keep in mind, once you put a V-mount battery on here and you actually rig it up, it is going to be a bigger camera. But if we're just purely, just going off the size of the camera, let's say if you're going to run this with two, Canon batteries, it's going to be much smaller. It's the same with the Pyxis. If you run this without the V-mount support, it's going to be much smaller as well. So it kind of depends right there in terms of how big you rig your camera out. But I will say both of these cameras are definitely cinema cameras. So with that being said, 99.9% of people using either one of these cameras are going to rig them out, so size really shouldn't be a factor. Another key difference of these cameras is going to be the media that these cameras take. So this uses CFast 2.0 and this uses cfexpress type B cards. Now overall I would say both mediums are fairly similar, but I will say the cfexpress type B is probably more universal at this point. You're definitely going to see it across the board in more cameras. So if you're someone who cares about media, you want something that's also a little bit of a better value, the cfexpress type B is going to be your way to go. And like I said, that's going to be for the Pyxis. So type B, you can use that in a bunch of cameras. So, like I said, you can use it on other Red cameras. Even the Komodo X takes that. You can actually use it on the Ursa Cine, a bunch of Canon cameras. So if you're thinking from a perspective of I want to, use media and use it with different cameras, you might prefer the Pyxis. In terms of the CFast 2.0, the original Komodo takes it and it works just as well, but like I said, it's definitely not going to be as compatible with modern cameras. So if that's something you care about, keep that in mind. Now, to me, the main key is image quality, as in which camera can produce a cinematic image. And I have to be honest, both cameras produce a cinematic image. Now, with this being a Super 35 camera, technically that is a factor, and this is a full frame camera. Keep in mind, on my Komodo, I actually have a speed booster. So this is a Viltrox speed booster. So if you're someone who prefers Komodo, but you want a full frame camera, you can definitely put a speed booster on there and it's going to relatively get you similar results as to what you would get on a full frame camera. If you're someone who doesn't want to do all of that, you're definitely going to prefer the Pyxis because like I say, this is a full frame camera. And in terms of image quality, both of these cameras look great. You're going to get a good image on both. I will say this is BRAW, this is RedRaw. So the difference is one camera is completely raw. If I shoot on ISO 100, when I go into post, I can take this as high as it goes. This camera shoots BRAW. So essentially BRAW is kind of like shooting half raw. So if I shoot on ISO 100, this is probably going to let me take it up to ISO 1000. Pretty much you can do it within ranges. So if I go to like ISO 1200, now when I go to adjust the raw of the Blackmagic camera, it's going to go maybe to 3200, maybe even 64, but you're not going to get the whole raw. So if you're someone who cares about raw, you're going to prefer the Red Komodo. Even though, like I said, B-RAW is very similar. So if you're someone who cares about complete raw control, you're going to prefer the Komodo. But honestly, as long as you get your settings right in camera, it's not going to make much of a difference. However, it is fun to be able to fully control the cameras. I recently did a commercial project, actually back in November or December, and I had to go all the way back and fully change everything. I'm talking about completely flip the script on the ISO. So it is cool when you can do that. And like I said, you can do that on this camera, but it's just going to be limited. Overall, both cameras can produce a cinematic image. They both work really well. I will say, ever since they updated the Komodo, the menu system works 10 times better. That was one of my biggest gripes with the Komodos. The menu used to be super slow, but with the recent beta update, they actually took care of that, so it moves a lot faster. The menu is definitely not faster than Blackmagic, or simpler for that matter, but it 100% makes the camera better. So, you know, I think that's cool. From an image perspective, both cameras look great. If you watch videos on YouTube and people talk about, oh, this looks better, that better, that's 100% just perspective. With either one of these cameras, if you put the same lens on them, put them in the same condition, they are both going to look good. They're both going to get the job done. It doesn't matter which one you use, they will both look cinematic. In fact, some people even prefer Blackmagic's image, but some people also prefer Red's image. So it ultimately just depends on your taste. They both look good. So we got to talk about the price. I paid $6,000 for this camera just a couple years ago, and now it's going for $3,000. Keep in mind, this is only for the RF mount. Now you got to ask yourself, why would Nikon drop the price on the RF mount but none of the Z mounts? And in my personal opinion, that's simply to get rid of stock. Everybody keeps talking about price drop, price drop, price drop. That is to get rid of stock. Once these cameras are sold out, they're probably not going to have them again. Now, does that mean they won't make a price drop in the future? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. But the $3,000 price drop is just for the RF mount. It's not for the Z mount, meaning it's not going to be forever. This Pyxis actually sells for $3,000 as well. So price-wise, they are super comparable. I will say, this is a newer camera. So you're going to get something that's definitely more supported than this older camera. If you're looking to buy something like a Komodo X, that's a different case scenario because they actually came out with the Z mount version, which means that camera is going to be supported. Now, does that mean they're going to throw this to the wayside? Not necessarily, but you do have to keep that in mind. Yes, both cameras are a similar price. One is basically brand new, which means this camera is going to be supported for quite a while. And if you know anything about Blackmagic, they definitely tend to support their cameras. So that's definitely something to consider when spending this type of money. So both of these cameras to me are expensive. With that being said, when you are buying a camera that is expensive, you definitely want to get something that's going to be supported. When buying the Blackmagic Pyxis, you know the camera is going to be supported for years to come. If you've ever owned a Blackmagic camera, they definitely push out updates, and that's honestly one of the areas where they shine. That's not to say they won't come out with updates for this camera. We know the Komodo X is going to be supported, but it is up in the air for Red. So finally, the verdict. Which camera should you buy? Honestly, if you sat through this entire video, then I think you figured out which camera you should buy, but I'll tell people just like this. Both cameras produce a great image. Neither one is far more superior than the other. I will say it comes down to preference. To me, the Pyxis is a dual ISO camera, so this to me is the better value. But I was like a lot of people a couple years ago, and I just really wanted a Red camera. So with that being said, if you're someone who really wants a Red camera, you can't go wrong with the Komodo. Now I will say the Komodo X is a better camera all around, but ultimately it depends on your budget. If you're looking at both of these cameras, and you probably want to stay within this range, so I totally understand. Like I said, both cameras produce a great image. To me, the Pyxis is a camera that's going to be supported more for years to come, so I think personally it's a better value. However, like I said, if you really want a Red camera, you can't go wrong with this camera. I mean, I've had this camera basically since it's come out, and I've never had issues from it, so it definitely works. I will say the kinks that I felt like they needed to work on were mainly like the menu system being laggy and different things like that. They fixed it with a recent update. Now, it took Red selling the company, but it definitely got fixed. So I think that's a super good sign. I think overall, both cameras are great. Now, let's talk about additional costs. Keep in mind, with either one of these cameras, you're gonna need a good lens, or not even a good lens, right? You can honestly use a bunch of lenses. These are just the base prices for the camera. You want to at least set aside $150 to $200 in order to get you a good cage. You want to get a monitor, which is going to cost, you know, on the cheap end, you can get a monitor for maybe $200, or you can get an expensive monitor. It kind of just depends on what you're looking for. So you're going to spend extra money either way. I think ultimately it depends on what you want. If you really value RedRaw and you want a camera that has complete raw control, get the Komodo. If you want a camera that's going to be supported in the future, that's super easy to use, I think Pyxis is going to be a better value. If you want a camera that just looks professional, you want people to look at you when you pull up, either camera works. They both will get the job done. With that being said, I really just wanted to make this video just to kind of give my perspective. I always see a lot of versus videos, and honestly, people, I mean, they give good information. It kind of just depends. I will say both of these cameras work great. If you want full frame without a speed booster, you'll probably prefer the Pyxis. If you want a camera that has a much simpler menu system, you'll probably prefer the Pyxis. Like I said, if you want raw, go red. If you've always wanted a red, this is a perfect time to get this camera. I mean, $3,000, that's a dub. You got to remember, when I was in school so long ago, like, we couldn't dream of getting cameras that had all of these specs for this price. Like, I mean, the first expensive camera I bought was a Canon 5D Mark III, and it was $2,000 plus, and it couldn't do half the things that these cameras can do. So we're just in a great space technology wise, and ultimately, get what you want. I'm firm on getting what you want. Get the camera you want. You're watching this video, you know what you want. But aside from that, like I said, I think both cameras are great. I'm really enjoying my Pyxis. I know I previously said I was selling this camera, and honestly, I've really been debating. When they dropped the price, I'm like, damn, do I want to sell it? I might actually keep it, but I have not decided yet, because it may just be my C cam. And honestly, that could work as well. But if you have any questions as it relates to both of these cameras, drop them in the comments below. I look forward to hearing from everybody. If there's anything you feel like I didn't cover, just let me know below. I'm always responding to comments, and I can even make a follow-up video if I need to. But aside from that, get the camera you want to use. Trust me, you're not going to regret getting either one. They both can get the job done. These both are great cameras. But as always, enjoy your day and take it easy.